there have been U.S. bombers, B-2 bombers, stationed in Diego Garcia. And the Trump administration has been targeting Iran and saying that the strikes on Ansarallah, the Houthis in Yemen, are all about Iran. But the Wall Street Journal has said that U.S. officials are not convinced that Ansarallah in Yemen are being deterred at all by Trump's airstrikes, which are ongoing as we speak. They admit that these bunker buster bombs being dropped on Yemen have actually done nothing. Yemen is firing missiles, ballistic, hypersonic missiles into Israel, essentially daily at the moment, as well as targeting the U.S. Navy and the Red Sea. It appears that Trump is making a fatal mistake here when it comes to Yemen. And all of this, according to the Trump administration, is building up to a war with Iran.
So, Danny, let me ask you a question. When you were a kid, were you the kind of kid that your mom said, "Don't touch the hot stove," and you listened to her, or did you touch it?
I would never touch a hot stove. I was scared of that stove.
Well, see, unfortunately, the United States is not as smart as you were. This notion that they were going to attack Yemen and destroy, disrupt, discourage, choose your adjective, the Houthis from continuing their campaign to stand up for the Palestinians who are victims of genocide was just foolish. Biden tried it, and now we know, thanks to Signalgate, as it's being called, that there was absolutely no justification whatsoever to launch these attacks on Yemen, other than to, quote, send a message to Iran that, hey, you better do what we say or else. Yemen, the Houthis had, in the aftermath of the Trump announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, that the Houthis said, great, that's all we wanted. But we wanted the killing of the Palestinians to stop, so they stopped interfering with freedom of navigation. They stopped shelling and sending missiles into Israel. And, the Trump administration's made they've not tried to hide their feelings that they want to attack Iran, or at least that's what they're saying. And, I think there is a good case to be made. I think Ray McGovern and I believe Brother Wilkerson here are inclined to believe that Trump is just doing what Trump normally does, is, shooting his mouth off, making idle threats. And, there's a lot of evidence for that they're not really going to do it. But I'm inclined to believe that just because that not only are they saying it, but they're putting in motion forces, at least to make everybody think they're going to do it. And I don't have enough confidence in their management ability to not accidentally hit the green button and go, oh, whoops, start the war.
Colonel Wilkerson, I'd like your military perspective on what's happening, not just in the Red Sea, but also the U.S. aerial campaign on Yemen, because what the Wall Street Journal is admitting is quite stunning, given that the Trump administration just said that the Houthis, Ansarallah, is ready to surrender, that they want peace now, and it's going to happen because of the U.S. airstrikes.
There's a little history of this for me. It's a very vivid history in my mind, because anything can be vivid to an 80-year-old.
You don't look it.
many years ago, I joined a group that was attempting to get, and successfully got, a war powers resolution on the floor of both houses of Congress to get the United States out of supporting then Defense Minister Mohammed bin Salman's war against Yemen. I think Mohammed thought, this will get me my bona fides as a defense minister. I'll just start this little war and it'll be over very shortly. I'll create a coalition of the willing. The only other formidable is very, very in quotes here, the United Arab Emirates, the little Sparta. So they went in and they waged war on the Houthis. And the United States gave them everything but soldiers on the ground. Literally, we gave them everything. when we were uncovered as giving them targeting guidance, the Saudis and their F-15s with their JDAMs, then we said, the Pentagon said, oh, we're giving them targeting guidance because they can't hit anything but civilian targets unless we give them guidance. So we're preventing civilians from dying. Right after that, they hit a school bus with 48 children on it. Some errant traveler wandered into the school bus and found a bomb casing that said Raytheon on the side of it. The United States has been involved in this ever since that time. And I've got to say, some of the most valiant warriors on the face of the earth, the Houthis, stood up to them and are still standing up to them. We actually got in both houses of Congress over Pelosi and Steny Hoyer's objections in the House and over strenuous similar objections from both parties in the Senate. We actually got legislation on the floor of both houses, and it passed. Fundamentally, Steny Hoyer and Pelosi had to back it at the end because they knew it was going to pass, but they knew it wouldn't go into effect because Trump would veto it, and he subsequently did. And we couldn't raise the 2/3 votes to override his veto. All to say, we've been illegally, in accordance with our Constitution, which this administration and the Obama administration before it gave not a hang about, unconstitutionally, we've been waging a war on the Houthis. Tell me who authorized this latest iteration of this war, which is a little bit more in your face. The United States going after the Houthis with tooth and dong, everything we had virtually except ground forces. Who authorized this? This is unconstitutional. Oh, that doesn't matter anymore. The Constitution has been put aside. It was put aside by Joe Biden. Hell, it was put aside by my president, George W. Bush. Barack Obama acted like he liked the Constitution, but he really didn't. Constitutional lawyer the man was. Every president is putting aside the Constitution now. That's my first remark on this. The question should have been from the American people, are we at war with the Houthis? And then this history should have been rehearsed with them. Yes, we've been at war with them for some time, hiding behind the Saudis. This is unconscionable what we're doing. And to answer your question directly, the Houthis are not about to give up. They're not about to give up. Yeah. They'll fight to the last mountain shepherd up there in those mountains, and they're not about to get up. And the only way you would rout them out is to mount an invasion from the Bab el-Mandeb or through the port of Hodeidah or whatever, and root them out totally with ground forces. We don't have the ground forces to do that. So you see what we are? We're an empire with a big mouth and not much of a hammer to back it up with.
Comment on what you've noticed about how Yemen, how Ansar Allah has responded to this, because all of this started with the Red Sea blockade reigniting because Israel was blockading and is blockading Gaza, starving Gaza, and of course has reignited the genocide. What do you make of how Yemen and Ansar Allah has responded to all of this?
Well, let's clarify what the good Colonel Wilkerson was saying. He's not advocating an invasion, but he's simply saying that if we wanted to have any hope of actually stopping this activity, we'd probably have to come up with around 1 million men to be able to insert and actually take control of that territory to stop it. And when you consider our current army strength total for all commitments around the world is 470,000 right now. We're a little shy, so we're going to come up short. I think it'd be helpful for both your viewers and listeners to understand that even though these airstrikes started on the Ides of March, the 15th of March, to understand that they didn't just within a day or two decide to do this. Because I spent 23 years scripting counterterrorism exercises for JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, but we dealt with all the theater saints, all the the European Command, Africa Command, what used to be called PACOM is now Indo-PACOM, and Southcom, Northcom, all of them. And I worked for a man who was actually the author of what's called JOPES. And he knew that thing inside and out. And JOPES is sort of how the planning process within the Pentagon within the Department of Defense works on military operations. Somebody, we don't know, was it President Trump? Was it Michael Waltz? But, somebody at the White House issued an order, an alert order, a warning order saying basically, hey, we need to do something to Yemen. We want to go in and hit take out their missile targets, take out their ability to damage shipping, however it was phrased. So that got tossed to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff sends it out to the commander of CENTCOM, and CENTCOM has now got an alert order, possible warning order. Oh boy, we got to get ready to do something. We have to prepare a plan of what we're going to do. So they get into their command group, and they're working up the who's going to do what, how many aircraft do we need, how many personnel, where are these going to be based, how they're going to get the refueled, if they're going to put in a CSAR package, if somebody gets shot down, how we're going to do combat search and rescue, this elaborate plan with courses of action. That went back up the chain of command, goes to the chairman and to SecDef, Mr. Hegseth, and they ultimately had to sign off on it and then brief the president. So, what we're talking about, you can do that in a crisis situation in maybe a 48-hour period, but this was not the kind of thing that they were doing under crisis. This was thought in advance. And that's what's important to understand, that just when you're looking at those texts from the signal chat, this thing had been planned well in advance. Why would you plan it in advance? Ask the question, did the Houthis do anything to provoke this? No, they hadn't. Since they had accepted the ceasefire, they had not fired a missile into Israel, and they hadn't been attacking any vessels in the Red Sea. So this was unprovoked on our part. And we killed civilians. We killed women and children by our actions. And we like to claim that we're fighting terrorism or we're defending freedom of navigation. All we're doing is lying our ass off.
The strikes are intense by the United States. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around Yemen being bombed in this way and going through what it has gone through for over a decade. All of this that Trump is doing now, too, as a tripwire or the whole agenda is Iran. But Yemen is holding strong, according to the Wall Street Journal, firing these missiles despite this bombing campaign. Yet Trump is saying he wants to go to war with Iran. What do you make of this militarily? It seems like an absolutely disastrous proposition. But at the same time, a lot of people have their sights on, how is Yemen doing this at all?
Well, I'd take you back to more iron bombs being dropped on the North Vietnamese than we dropped on the Germans in World War II. And a comment by LBJ when he was, Lyndon Baines Johnson, when he was pondering whether or not to add another some 45 or 50,000 and then ultimately all the way up to 400,000 or 500,000 troops to the war in Vietnam. LBJ said, "Oh ho, ain't gonna be moved by no bombs." Well, LBJ was exactly right, but he had political considerations, and so went ahead with a disastrous decision that cost about 35,000, 40,000 more American soldiers' lives. In this case, those Yemenis are not going to be moved by no bombs. This is a great myth of American military and other militaries too. The Germans fell for it too in World War II, for example, that bombs effectively change people's minds. Bill Clinton fell for it when he bombed Serbia for 78 straight days. Bombs don't change anybody's minds. And I remember vivid pictures of Serbs standing on some of the bridges at Belgrade and extending the middle finger to the F-16s and other planes that were dropping the bombs on them. That's what bombs do. Wes Clark had to essentially violate his own orders under his U.S. hat and put on his NATO hat. He was the commander of all the forces in Europe and wore two hats, the U.S. commander and the commander, Supreme Allied Commander, NATO. He had to put on that hat and go to Tony Blair and ask Tony Blair to give him permission to threaten the use of ground forces and move Apache helicopters. Clinton got so mad at Clark that afterwards he fired him. But essentially, when he moved the ground forces and the helicopters next to the border, Milosevic caved in and started to ask for negotiations. Bombing does not convince anyone to do anything but get madder than hell at the person dropping the bombs. That's the main reason why Hamas is holding out so resolutely, and they are holding out resolutely. They've refurbished their ranks. They're ready to fight Israel to the last Hamas fighter again now, because they're convinced that he was duplicitous with regard to the ceasefire. They're right. He actually was duplicitous. He had no intent of going to a second phase. Bombs do not convince anybody to do anything. They simply don't. The only thing that convinces anything, and this is my prejudice, I'm an infantryman, you got to put troops on the ground. And the United States, the empire, is not about to do that because it knows it would probably get whipped in that too.
You know, all of this is meant, according to the Trump administration, to move toward Iran. They're holding Iran accountable. And many have intimated these B-2 bombers that are stationed now on Diego Garcia, ready to fly, are looking to strike Iran. And it's not working. So how do we square this circle, Larry?
Well, I'm going to draw on my CIA training in answering this question. And part of that CIA training was plagiarism. So when you steal from somebody else, you get to take credit for it. So I'm going to steal from Larry Wilkerson what he said earlier today, that the staging of these B-2s and the B-52s on Diego Garcia is, this is theater, because the fact of the matter is they launch from position from their bases in the United States and can still fly and hit those targets. So they don't need to be out there. It's just it's a matter of show. And so that gives, I think, some support to Colonel Wilkerson's argument and Ray McGovern's argument that Trump is just bluffing, that he doesn't intend to go through with this. And boy, this is one where I pray they are right. But what we do also know is that Trump, the Trump team clearly saw, what we know from the signal chat, they clearly saw the attack on Yemen as part of a broader messaging campaign to tell Iran, watch out or else. The thing that troubles me is I listen to what they say in terms of what are their assumptions. And one of their key assumptions is that Iran suffered irretrievable losses to its air defense system when Israel attacked on October 27th of 2024. And that because of those severe losses, that Iran now is totally exposed and vulnerable, and that the United States could easily launch an airstrike, combination of missiles, bombs, JDAMs, and other cruise missiles, and take out all the remaining, not only the defense sites in Iran, but the sites that are, quote, developing nuclear weapons. And then we hear Trump said, "Oh yeah, they're close. They're really close to developing a nuke." Except this week, we got the intelligence community threat assessment, which says explicitly they are not building a nuke. So here we got Trump ignoring what the intelligence says and making a case predicated upon false assumptions. And when I see that, I don't rule out the possibility of them doing something really, really stupid.